Hi, my name is Dan Moses. I live here in the Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks, North Hollywood area in Los Angeles. Been born and raised here my whole life, and I am an observant Jew. I'm actually one of six brothers. I own a boxing gym on Burbank and Fulton called ISU Boxing. So I do professionally box to a degree, but don't do amateur or pro. I do run the business to help other people scale in that regard, and we have a training grounds for the world to learn how to defend themselves or to get fit or to simply learn the art of boxing. But I didn't end up in that position if it weren't for the kind relationship I have with the co-founder and CEO of that business, Ken Artunian, my coach, a very kind and renowned man, someone I'm very fortunate to call my mentor. Now, to put my business aside and why I'd even be talking to the camera is because in order to have gotten to that position and gone through many other things in my life, I've taken many steps to be away from the camera and away from the public eye, because people in my position, if you grow up somewhat secularly, I actually grew up as an Orthodox Jew, but I was very rebellious in this regard, and I tried to integrate with the public school system and the other schools with prom and partying and all these other things until I kind of grew up and realized that, oh man, that I don't really want to be doing this for the rest of my life. I did make those decisions through certain exterior problems that came my way, like broken engagements and seeing that friends who say they have your back, or perhaps community members who say they love you and support you and don't actually do all of these things. Now, the frame of reference that I have is, movies in high school? I'm 25 years old, and I wasn't 25 years old when I made a good amount of mistakes, but I've fortunately been better for it. So I kind of want to speak to the world, or virtually anybody who's listening, and talk about a couple talking points I think are very important. There's a big bubble that people who are going through the school systems are living in. And that isn't increasing the quality of your life, and it isn't educating you, because education is from within, and it's based on the individual to want to take these things upon yourselves. So if you're learning from other people who themselves are not good representatives and don't have the education to pass to you, then what is it that you're doing? I've seen from my own peers and the many people that I interact with that ultimately you have professional test takers and then you have hard workers. Now, I'm more on the side of a hard worker because I started working at 16 years old. And that's totally to the credit of my family for supporting me to work with my brother and try doing whatever I can be doing and develop skill sets over the course of many years. Now, unfortunately for many of my friends or people that I know over the course of many years, they're still in school now. Now, if school were the only discussion that I'd want to bring up, it would be a very boring conversation. So I don't really want to get lost there. I'm actually even more interested in talking about what is life about and what are people really supposed to be doing? Now, I would say that I'm not the most educated person on earth, or am I at my fullest extent as a human being. I think I'm 25 and have things to learn, but I do know enough, and I have a background as an observant Jew, that there is a God and there is a way to live as a man and as a woman, and that we have roles and that we have a purpose. That purpose has been eliminated by the majority of the institutions that most people take part in. Unfortunately, most people are very hardworking and have gone through tremendous hardships just to maintain living and surviving. The knowledge that I'd like to give to other people is from a foundation that I didn't create, and it comes from a people whom God designated to educate not only themselves and their children, but to also minister to the world. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what is a Jew and what is their purpose. I think from a secular standpoint, we're getting attacked from being a small blip on the map by Palestinian terrorists and a massive group of people who take up tons and tons of land in other area, whom their religion we don't touch, and we don't go out of our way to attack them. But for some reason, what's going on in Israel is significant and important. So to kind of remove the political side and simply discuss, where do the children of Israel come from? So we were established as a nation 3,500 years ago under a narrative that Jews, Muslims, and Christians all believe in. That is called the revelation at Sinai, that there is a God whom over 1 million people witnessed give the 10 Commandments to Moses. Now, the 5 books of Moses are the testament in which I'm referring to that even describes that event. But it has been maintained ever since that event, and it's been 3,500 years. And God told this nation whom he established on that mountain, you're going to minister my laws, my decrees, and my ordinances that I wrote in this book. That's what I believe in. I believe in that narrative. I grew up seeing the benefits of that. And also, I live in a country that was based on those values and flourished based on those values. We call it Judeo-Christian values. I'm a massive believer in that, and I think it's extremely positive for the world. Now, I live in this world as a Jew living amongst Christians and Jews and Muslims and all sorts of other people. And we can connect only when we have a foundation, that there is a God and that there's a 10 Commandments and that there's a way to live morally and ethically. There is a massive uprising of people who like to use ethics and morality as a basis for conversation, but simply self-reference. This has put us in a position where I guess you can be a glorified delinquent. I don't think any of that's positive or good. I don't want to be glorifying people to do whatever their heart desires and you're cool, right? Like, you're not cool. It has consequences, and we're living those consequences. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what those consequences are. Thank God I'm fortunate enough to have many friends and people who regard me with kindness and with gratitude, and I couldn't ask for much more. But they themselves are also some pretty great men, and they're pretty young and pretty successful at the same time. All of us deal with the same issue. For some reason, you can be a 35-year-old, millionaire, billionaire with muscles and influence, yet you're not married and you don't have children. And a lot of the time, people are describing these issues on the camera, and I think that's good. I myself am trying to add to those voices. I'm not necessarily convinced that I'll be able to reach everybody and anybody, but if it does help, it's simply on the basis of those people speaking out on the side of good. I'd like to add to be another voice, and I would tell as many people out there as possible that I'm doing it now. I don't like it. I've taken many steps to remove myself from the camera and the social media and the lifestyle that I used to live in order to try and live presently. And I don't think that the camera helps in this regard. I know it doesn't help, and it does a lot more harm than good. But since everybody's living on this platform, and I'm willing to acknowledge that this is existence and this is humanity, that you yourself should try and express your dissatisfaction of what's going on. For me, it comes from a pretty primal level, pretty human level, from my understanding of the Bible and also my understanding as a human being. Men and women want to be together. And if you're teaching young girls that they're not going to be wives and mothers and that they're not going to birth children into this life, then you're trying to stop humanity from flourishing and continuing on, because women are the mother of all living. And when it comes to men, we're providers and we're protectors, and we have responsibilities and we have a job to do. We actually are commanded from God to not listen to women when they say really nonsensical and neurotic things. And there's the snake involved and there's curses involved. Now, I'm talking a bit about some biblical points that are extremely relevant, but instead of diving into the Torah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the environmental issues that I think all men and women are dealing outside of religion. Women are not being taught to be wives and mothers. Instead, they're being taught to join the workforce and wait for an opportune moment to marry some dream guy. Well, let me tell you, that's a lie, and it's not going to work out like that. And if you're not fulfilling your purpose, then you're likely to live with part of the curses. Now, for man, we work much, much better with a reason to work. If we don't have women who are pregnant and at home, maintaining our households and loving us, there's not a lot of good reasons to be working so hard. And if we're going to be able to have women, then we're going to have them in a promiscuous and morally sinful way. For example, there's a hookup culture that we all exist in. For anybody who's even dipped their toe in there, they're likely to admit the truth that it's really a facade. This hookup culture where everybody gets together and everybody's having so much sex, there's people watching other people have sex through the forms of pornography, which don't only extend to straight sex, but also to transsexual sex. And we've gotten to so much confusion on gender, as if that should be a confusion, that ultimately we're foundationless as a people. I'm speaking out to the camera simply to say some things that I find to be obvious at this point in my life, simply because I've had to survive through it. And it's helpful to you that someone else is going through it and they're seeing it. And hopefully you see this as a success, because I believe my life to be a success up to this point. That I can encourage you to continue on your path and to look into the foundation of the 5 books of Moses, to start realizing that we didn't create morality, and that if we don't accept God into the picture, then we're going to have to live with all of these environmental problems. We created them, and it's up to us if we're going to remove it. I could go on, but this is my first attempt at the camera, and I'm probably going to put myself out there and see what happens. I will talk Torah because I am a rabbi, and that's not because I want to be. It's because the actual rabbis who maintain that label don't do their job. I think that there's plenty of old people with enough wisdom to hypnotize you over the course of an hour, but ultimately, if they're going to self-reference, you should watch out. And so I'd like to give you the tools so that you can find out the answers yourself. And whether it creates hate or it creates love or unity, I'm already living in that existence. So hopefully this does benefit to those who watch it, and God willing, I'll be placed in a position where I can do more.